All right, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my COMS 101 speech. My name is Tanner, and I'm going to introduce you to your audience. This is Spencer, Ryan, and Dan, and again, they're going to be my audience for today. So with that, I'm going to jump right into this, which the purpose of this speech was to inform people about how a business or a career or even a job enhances something that God values. In my case, I chose something personal, something that I do for a living, which are taking people out on boat tours. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of explain what a boat tour is, explain how in science and behavior we can actually see God, and how ultimately this can lead people to Christ, which is something that God values. With that, I'm going to give you a couple statistics. The first one being from EndangeredEarth.com, the leading endangered animals website. In 2015, they have said that over 41,000 animals will now be placed on the endangered species list. Even more so, 16,000 of those are near the verge of extinction. So with that, I want to tie in the main theme here, which is something that God values. God definitely values His creation. We see that through the Bible, where He talks about how He took time to create everything and how it took Him, 7 days to create this beautiful place. So the boat tours allow people to value God's creation. We show people God through His creation, His ecosystems and wildlife, and ultimately plant a seed or help people come to Christ. I have personally worked with this company that is a Christian company in Alaska, Costa Rica, Hawaii, and even Virginia. And again, we take people out and show them Christ through these tours. My motivation behind this, and especially in this speech, is the command that God gave Adam, which was to mend to the wildlife and the Garden of Eden. And I really do think we can apply that to our day and age now, which is that we care and do everything we can to help wildlife and nature and the ecosystem, whatever you come up with, things that we see on this boat tour. Again, the overall verse for this speech for me was that the great are the works of the Lord, studied by all those who delight them. And without anything to study or anything to see, we can't delight God's work. So again, these boat tours help us to see that and apply that in our daily life. So with that, I'm going to jump into my first point, which are, what are boat tours? Well, boat tours are a way of taking about 150 passengers out into a national park, historical area, or even just the wide open ocean. What we do is we show people animals in their natural habitat, explain to them historic places, for example, World War II, bunkers or machine gun areas, and even more so we get to explain to them why glaciers are formed or why forests act the way they do or even jungles are sustained. The coolest part about our tour is showing people God's creativity in nature and wildlife. We hear about how God is so powerful and so magnificent, but we also forget He's a creator. He's an artist. And, on these tours, we can definitely view God's beauty in these ecosystems, these bunkers, anything in that you can view. The verse kind of that supports that, in my opinion, is Romans 1:20, where it says, His power and divine nature have been clearly seen through that which He has made. Anytime you go on one of these tours, it's amazing the things that you just see on an everyday basis, and definitely the beauty and the wildlife enhances what God has created. So that's one of the coolest part. The purpose, I would say, behind us personally taking people out is to give them knowledge of how we affect both positively and negatively animals in their natural habitat. The NationalParkService.com states that without government funding, almost 411 national parks will be closed down. This has a huge effect on both wildlife and nature. Again, if there's not wildlife to show people, or jobs like mine where we can show people animals and nature, it's hard for us to reach people in that area. So we kind of explain to them how our boat tours are helping these animals by raising awareness and helping get funding for national parks. So that's kind of what a boat tour is. So let's go into how we can directly see God in these boat tours. So as people take our tours, they hear about the science behind animals. Again, we talked about the beauty, the power, and the unique ability of Christ. Well, let's talk about the science. We also know God is the most intelligent person ever. Obviously, He created us. But it's unique for people because they get to see God's unique science in these animals. For example, on orca's communication, most people don't realize that orcas are actually the smartest animal in the world. They have almost thousands of orca pods all around the world, 25 specifically in Alaska and the Canada area, the ones that I research. But what's amazing about them is that each pod has a unique language to that pod, but has the ability to speak to other pods in a very generic language. That would just be like you or I speaking in Spanish or English. We have enough to communicate. The otter's pelt has almost 1,000,000 hairs per foot, an amazing ability that allows them to stay in the water all year round. And even the whale has a muscle called the peduncle muscle where they are able to push out 50 tons of water with only 3 swipes, allowing them to free themselves or to communicate with other whales. One of my favorite things in regards to science is science and glaciers. A lot of times evolutionists will tell me as a Christian believer that you may be able to convince me that there's a God and how beautiful this place is, but how do you explain the 10,000-year-old ice? Well, if we're being honest, and this is from glacier.com, it states that most ice that is picked up is 75 to 200 years old, the ice that we are able to either test or see. Well, if it's 75 to 200 years old, it's hard to make an argument that it's 10,000 years old. And what their argument is that they are able to guess what the atmosphere was like 10,000 years ago and find pieces of ice that have that same type of guessing atmosphere and say that that's why it's 10,000 years old. Well, that's just a false argument in my opinion. That's a hypothesis, not a theory. What we also know is that glaciers move in a conveyor belt way, meaning they come from the top and drop down to the bottom. This would not allow, even if the world was around 10,000 years, for a piece of ice to be able to withstand the time because it constantly moves almost 6 to 8 feet a day. And then, so to sum this up, how does science help, what God values in life? And again, we're talking about seeing Him in science, in wildlife, and in nature, and ultimately leading people to Christ. Well, I like the verse Job 33, 7 through 8, and I'm going to sum this up. And pretty much what it says is that the Lord values His creation, and we see it in His science. So He's very proud of what He's done, obviously, with us and animals and nature. So I'm going to move into my next point, which has to deal with animal behavior. Again, tying this into the main theme of how something that God values. We can see God's power in the behavior of animals, His creativity, His magnificence. You see things like Him using the average bird of a seagull. Obviously, we don't really like seagulls. They tend to get in the way or they poop on everything. But what we don't realize is that seagulls actually help big animals like whales find fish. They hear the pecking on the water, and they're actually able to find big groups of fish because of the seagulls. God in the Bible oftentimes used the very low or lowest person they could, tax collectors, women, all this stuff. You kind of see that in the animal kingdom where you see seagulls helping whales. You also see amazing abilities with dolphins. Dolphins are actually able to click and whistle to help stun fish and to hunt together without making too much noise. Fish aren't really aware of the clicks and whistles. We even see singing from the whales where it allows whales to come together and hunt together and trap fish in these sounds. It's truly amazing if you've ever been to it. The other thing is that everything that God does has a purpose. Even each animal, if you look, everybody knows the animal kingdom and how it works from bottom up. And if one of those is taken out, it's like a domino theory. It affects everything, every wildlife, every piece of nature, and even us in the end. So again, going back to one of the purposes is to make people aware. We oftentimes tell people, it's important that these animals stay in their natural habitat because if they don't, ultimately it's going to affect fish, which we eat fish, which, mammals eat, we eat mammals, all this stuff all connects. Which again, I'm amazed to see how God really truly used the entire animal kingdom to affect everything. So with that, we like to enhance people's knowledge and reminding them that animals and humans need their own place. It's important that we keep these natural habitats for God, to acknowledge God's beauty and God's science and God's behavior in these, or God's abilities in these animals. But we also want to give people and animals their space so that they can both thrive. So again, tying this all in, how does this truly enhance something that God values? Well, again, I truly believe through Scripture and some of the verses that I've given you that God values His creation. Obviously, we know He created the heavens and the earth, and He truly values what He's created on earth, and that includes animals. Obviously, humans are at the top. That is what God cares about the most. However, it is a part of life that we take care of these animals. He didn't simply just create them to be just something that He created. No, I believe it was a purpose, and we can take people out on these tours, explain to them how these animals are amazing, unique, and how God has given them those abilities. And ultimately, this leads to saving people's lives, which is something truly God values, and we know that. And it's all about planting a seed for us. If we take people out and show them something they've never seen before, plant that seed that shows people, look, this is what God can do, and this is what He's created it, and He's given it to honor and glorify Him and show us what He can do. So I think that's one of the coolest part is taking people out and showing them, look, if you can come out on my tour and tell me that that is an accident, not a creation, that you are totally lost. You just have no idea, because it truly is an amazing thing. Well, I appreciate you guys listening. I hope you guys take a boat tour someday. Again, this is just tying in how God can work in boat touring business. Thank you for your time, and I'll hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.